Okay, so today I'm going to be planting my new Dwarf Nectarine. Basically, we picked this up at a local nursery. I've grabbed a bag of the citrus and rose, basically soil mix, because I wasn't sure how good the soil would be. This is basically one of the sunniest spots in our kind of interior garden. And with the nectarines, we do want that to be close at hand, especially with it being a dwarf tree, so that we can keep an eye on it, obviously keep it watered, and hopefully grab the fruit and maybe even protect the fruit if birds and things like that are a real problem, which they could well be. I've dug the hole. I have come up against a little bit of a problem. Obviously, the recommendation with these is a well-draining soil, something more loamy. And as I've dug down, I've actually hit a bit of clay. And so I wasn't intending on using it to start off with, but I've got some of these Birdies round 700 mil kind of garden beds / tree inserts. With the tree, they do recommend you dig it down into the ground. I'm not going to do that because I want to try and lift the tree up just a little bit to make sure that its roots don't get stuck in that clay and get kind of drowned, or it isn't too wet and too moist for the tree. We're going to give this a go. It's hard to say how this is going to go, but I want to give it a try because it's so nice to have a relatively small bush. This is only a 1.5 meter tall, and I'll just quickly grab it. So we've grabbed a Trixie Nectazee miniature nectarine, 1.5 meters, suitable for cool temperate zones of Australia with cool winters. So hopefully we'll be all right here. It gets down to 3 or 4 degrees in the real heart of winter. And as you can see here, also the tree is already starting to look pretty good, and we've got a month of winter to go. So let's chuck it in the ground and then let's just see how we go. So I've just lifted the plant up a little bit to basically, get that root ball a little bit higher. Despite the big bag that this came in, the root ball was only kind of like this big, so much smaller than the bag, and it was by no means root bound at all. So that's one bag of the Searles fruit, citrus and rose. Basically, that was what was available. I want something to give this the best chance of getting started as possible, which is why we went with that, not just using the standard soil, which I think in other parts of the garden I've noticed the topsoil is much better. Here there was a much smaller topsoil, and as a result I think that was probably a good gamble to make, paying $12 for a bag of soil to help this process. And we're not going to be filling this up to the rim, but I'm going to mix in some of the soil that was here originally, and we'll see how we go with that. Okay, so there we go. We've mixed in a bit of the soil that was originally here. We've given it a good bit of basically fruit and citrus mix to give it a good start. I'll keep an eye on this. We'll keep it watered and we'll see how we go basically. This is our first nectarine, and yeah, we're hoping this does well. And I mean, potentially it's a little bit overshadowed here by some of the surrounding trees. We're heading into summer, so this section here should be probably one of the sunniest sections of this garden here. And while we are next to the house, the direction of the sun shouldn't really be overshadowed too much in this particular corner. The further back you go, the more shaded it gets, and particularly in winter, kind of back this way does get quite a bit more shaded in the afternoon, although there is good morning sun. And with the trees behind us, we might have to trim some of those back if we need a little bit more light, which wouldn't be too much of an issue, but we'll see how we go long term. Now, as far as fertilizing, I'm not going to worry about anything at all because we've just chucked in that full bag of soil, which should have a slow release fertilizer in it. What's it say? 6 months of fertilizer should be ideal. Extra potash for fruit and blooms. We're heading into spring in about a month, so hopefully this gives it a really good head start. And we do have some fruit fertilizer, some slow release that we can chuck on if it seems necessary, but this is very much a first try. As far as the extra soil I've got around this, I'm just going to chuck it around the garden bed, and I'm taking off the basically the plant details. We're going to put that somewhere safe and try and keep a record of each thing we put in. And basically the details, but because it's got this little extra plant slip here with the extra bolt that was quite intelligently provided by birdies with their little raised garden bed, I've used that to connect that onto the garden bed instead of the plant, so it's not going to restrict the plant at all, and it still has it there nice and accessible, and it's of course held in place by that extra nut on the already installed bolt. And so yeah, this is a cool little way of using the garden bed. It's not perfectly flat, but I'm not too concerned about that at this stage. And certainly looking at it, there's probably the option to, before the tree gets too big, remove the garden bed if I really needed to, but hopefully this will do the trick and really contain the tree. I did notice that around the base of the tree, basically as I'd got this tree, the soil was a little bit higher than I might have expected. However, I'm going to assume the people in the nursery who did all this probably know better than me, so I'll follow kind of where the soil was to on the trunk, and that's just what we've done for now. Hey there, Chris here. Update on our miniature nectarine, or Nectazee, I think it is. Ignore my grass, which is in desperate need of a mow, and we'll talk about the nectarine itself. Now, when I planted this, it was in full bloom. It was looking really, really cool as far as the flowering side of things. But since then, it actually hasn't grown that much. I guess it's hard to tell because it's been 2 months in the ground, and obviously it hasn't exploded in size. And I do think if I'd gotten a larger, a full-size nectarine, it probably would have gotten much, much taller. But one of the benefits of this kind of dwarf variety is that I'm keeping it small, and it makes it ideal for this little section of the garden here. The sun's now gone down. We've got really nice growth here. As far as what I've actually done, I have put a little bit of fruit fertilizer around it. It has received a couple of waters, not very much. I've mainly just allowed it to just get the rain that's fallen. I have removed a couple of the mid branches, mainly to keep this center section a little bit clearer, and also because there was no actual real leaf growth on them. Obviously they'd budded up originally, but they weren't doing anything. And so as a result, we've kind of got an empty center in here, and then we've got 3, 4 kind of big outward branches. And actually we've got, at the moment, 2 little nectarines here. Now, I should probably take them off to encourage the plant to grow, but to be honest, I'm not really about min-maxing the growth and the output of this. It's just about the journey. And so having 2 little nectarines is pretty cool. It does look like some bugs may have taken a little bit of a bite at them, but overall, it's really nothing to worry about that I would say. We might not be able to eat those ones, but it's just been cool to see them grow. I have put a little bit of mulch in, as long as putting in some of that fertilizer. As I said, a bit of slow release fertilizer. I'm probably going to add a bit more mulch to try and drown out the weeds. The garden bed being really, really not flat is annoying, and it does appear as though we've had something that has had a little bit of a dig around this garden bed, but whatever it is, it hasn't had a go at the plant, which is good, and as a result, I'm pretty happy with how this has gone, and I'd be very, very happy to put another little miniature fruit tree of some kind in. However, from what I understand, it's a bit harder to get a dwarf plum, for instance, which would be my second choice, and we might have to put in other larger fruit trees. But this is a huge success story. So if you're looking at this video, the one big thing that I would definitely say is obviously this has been in the ground for 2 months, and it has evolved from a heavily bloomed up little twig essentially into a much more, green plant. However, the reality is that we've been going to the same nurseries where we bought this and some of our other plants for the last couple of months, and you can probably go and buy one in at least this good a position and at least this well developed, if not better, because the stuff in the nursery seems to grow really, really well. Get one in the ground now and you're probably going to be just as happy as I am. Obviously the establishment period, because it's spring now, is really good for this, and it was put in the last month of winter, first month of spring, and that probably does help, and we've had pretty good weather, we've had a good bit of rain, but certainly if you're considering something like this, go out and grab one, get it in the ground now while we've still got a couple of months of spring left to go before we get really into that summer weather, and make the most of it. And obviously I'm talking about the people in the southern hemisphere like me, who are obviously enjoying spring as we're going into it, as opposed to those of you who might be over in the Northern Hemisphere and who are looking at some pretty bleak winter coming on. But yeah, this is a really cool one, and I'm really happy with the size, how well it's gone, and really just the overall progress, even though it hasn't really exploded. So yeah, there you go.